戦争は変わった。一つの時代が終わり、俺たちの戦争は終わった。
War has changed. It's no longer about nations, ideologies, or ethnicity. It's an endless series of proxy battles fought by mercenaries and machines. War and its consumption of life has become a well-oiled machine. War has changed. Verified soldiers carry algorithmic arms, manipulate social influence, AI enhance and regulate their timelines. Memetic control, information control, emotion control, battlefield control. Everything is monitored and kept under control. War has changed. The age of deterrence has become the age of control, all in the name of averting catastrophe from weapons of mass destruction. And he who controls the battlefield controls history. War has changed. And when the battlefield is under total control, war becomes routine.
Think outside the cage.
The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy.
You are listening to Canary Crime News Talk.
You're listening to Canary Cry News Talk. Today is June 10th, 2026. We're live to tape on episode 948. And today, Riot for Re-Enchantment. Signing on from Off the Grid, Razzle Dazzle. I'm your best buddy, Basil, and you are not crazy.
Re-Enchantment or Re-Enchantment? My name is Gonz, at Face Like the Sun, at director of the Age of Deceit films, author of Prophecy Without Panic, Recovering the Patterns Behind Bible Prophecy, your favorite Asian provocateur for Christ. Live to tape from the metaverse to bring you the best news, which is the gospel message of Jesus Christ, while reporting the egregious with a well-rounded, biblically grounded take on world events. It is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes. Wednesday.
And among many things, today is National Iced Tea Day, National Herbs and Spices Day, National Ballpoint Pen Day.
Oh,
but I think the most interesting thing, Basil, that we don't plan these things. They just happen.
Mm-hmm.
It is International Day for Dialogue Among Civilizations.
Okay. Day for this sounds like a United Nations thing. I see you've got something on the screen here. Okay,
yes.
Tell me. I'm all ears.
This is, of course, prompted by the United Nations. The notion of civilization is not easy to define and can be subject to misrepresentation. However, the UNESCO regards it as universal, pluralistic, and non-hierarchical reality, which is ironic.
Wait.
United Nations would say that.
Say that again. Okay, so they are defining civilization for us here.
Yes, according to UNESCO, which is, of course, an underling of the United Nations.
Which actually is going to be in a very important part of a piece of news we're going to check in here. So I want to listen closely.
Yes, and by the way, I have this book just on hand. This is UNESCO, Its Purpose and Philosophy, Facsimiles of English and French. This is from Julian Huxley from the 1920s, talking about the shape of education to come. Anyway, UNESCO defines civilization as a universal, pluralistic, and non-hierarchical reality, recognizing that civilizations are inherently shaped by intercultural dynamics while retaining their unique identities.
Oh my gosh, somebody was on absinthe when they wrote that.
They declare June 10th as International Day for Dialogue Among Nations, to acknowledge the essential role of dialogue in fostering awareness and understanding of universal values to bring about the beast system and take over society in a much more hierarchical manner than people.
Ethereal gobbledygook, like spellcraft nonsense day that I've ever heard. I love it. I'm actually a huge fan. Wow. Okay. Well, it's time to talk with other nations. Sorry. It's time to have a dialogue between universal, pluralistic, non-hierarchical realities, apparently.
Well, yes.
It's
Parallel
very
realities.
interdimensional. It's very...
It is interdimensional.
I
Yeah.
like it.
They know what's going on. They understand the hierarchies of interdimensions, but maybe they're not seeing it on this earth plane. You know, they're like, there are no hierarchies, as
It's
they are the
revelation
ones.
of the method is what it is.
It
This
is,
UNESCO
absolutely.
revelation of the method.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it just so happens to resonate with everything we're going to talk about today, with the sort of counterfeit civilization,
Everything.
counterfeit beasts, or counterfeit gospel, you know, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, it's interesting because in a way, civilization is like maybe the most foundational understanding of the sort of secular material world that we live in today. You know,
Yeah.
like civilization good, we must protect civilization. We must protect it from Donald Trump. We must protect it. You know, it's like the biggest existential threat. If you're going to have an existential threat, right? From a spiritual point of view or from a Christian point of view, the highest existential threat would be to your soul, correct? Like this is when you're talking about our existence, the highest thing that could be threatened is our soul, personally. But when it comes to like secular materialist, scientific worldview, the highest abstract existential threat there could be would be to civilization. And in a way, they're kind of describing civilization almost as a soul in itself, you know, this universal, pluralistic, non-hierarchical reality, man. Yeah. Wow. I had no idea that UNESCO was so trippy like that.
my leg got wet and I was wondering what happened. My children are spraying me with water. Great. Fantastic. This is going to be a good one.
Might be a good idea to start. It's going to be a fun episode. We're going to have some fun here. But good to note, just for anybody who might, hear some interruptions or perhaps sense some sort of distraction on Gonza's side. You do have the kids today. They are in the room.
Yes.
And they are hopped up on Mountain Dew.
No. They do not drink soda. They're hopped up on carrots and milk and apple juice. Yeah.
Good.
So
good clean energy. Good clean energy.
Clean energy.
So, we're calling a little bit of an audible today. But I do want to let's do this. Let's call the producers, Gons. Can we do that?
Let's do it. Yep.
Producers, assemble!
That's right. The whole Canary Cry family. I want to keep our UK, Northern Irish, generally European, but we've got some producers over there, a lovely longtime group of producers over in the UK there, and I want to keep them in prayers. Of course, some of the biggest news breaking over the past couple days was another horrific series of events over in Belfast, which is a city that is very dear to me, very dear to some friends. I've done episodes from Belfast. I've done, I'm trying not to dive deep into a rabbit hole of sort of background and history to set up what's been going on recently. But there was a horrific knife attack, and the people in Belfast have had enough. Okay, things are it's been a tinderbox over there for quite a while. Of course, we now have 2 successive horrible events that have happened regarding immigrants in that area, and the natives of the Emerald Isles in the UK are things are popping off. And of course, the media, the institutions, they all have wonderful time-tested and oftentimes diabolical ways to tell the rest of the world what they want them to think is going on over there. It's a bad situation, but to avoid diving into sort of the cultural mosh pit that is discussing too much of this. I will say it's an unfolding situation, but more than anything, I want to pray for the safety of all of our Canarians over there in the area. I've reached out to some of my friends and contacts in Belfast specifically to see if, we can get any boots on the ground or a little bit more clarity on what's going on over there. Long story short, if you have heard nothing, depending on what news organization you're reading, if you read the BBC, the white racists have taken to the streets and are burning down the town, and it's all very bad. And if you read some other outlet, it's going to be a little bit more focused on the now series of violent events from immigrants towards non-immigrants in that area. But, it's kind of weird being an American watching that happen over there, because the parallels are so striking to what we had during the sort of George Floyd era. And it's just weird to see it play out in a very European manner. I will
Yeah.
say there, where most people are, would sort of intellectually discuss what's going on there, even from the violence to the riots to even just non-violent protesting. This isn't a statement about immigration. This is the people of Belfast, the people of Northern Ireland, making a statement about immigration from non-European countries. But the very clever way that the institutions in that area are guiding the conversation, are specifically criticizing, and I think the institution will use it as an opportunity to what's the word? I don't know. Reinstitute, rejigger. I don't know if that's a word, a real word. But much less about immigration from Africa to the UK, but in a historically important and dangerous way. Make this much more about the free flow of traffic between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Of course, Northern Ireland, maybe the most recent European history with some very intense civil strife, the Troubles throughout many decades, but ending around the turn of the century. It's an area that is just ripe for a flashpoint. And as we've been told over and over by some of our favorite elites, lizard people around the world, make sure not to let any disaster go to waste. Okay, this is an opportunity to divert people's attention. But
Yes.
more than anything, pray for the safety and the peace of our producers and everybody over there in Belfast. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, and just for people who may be newer to the show, we did have an episode. I'm trying to find the exact episode number. Maybe it was a couple years ago now, where you had done your travels. You went up to Ireland, and for me, I don't have any not much back knowledge on this particular conflict. But from what I understand, this has to do with a religious conflict. It kind of represents a Protestant versus Catholic thing going on. But also, it's very much reminiscent and almost uncomfortably tied to the current Israel versus Palestine issue.
Yes.
The parallels are uncanny, including the people involved.
Yes,
Yes,
right.
the people who
Absolutely
stoked
uncanny.
the conflict.
And it's supported by history. This is known history, not very popular history, but known
Yes.
history, that even in the words of the Queen at the time, the operation by the British Empire that we saw unfold, which is now quite popular history for obvious reasons, in the Middle East, in the Israel-Palestine, let's say, geographical border drawing, the whole operation in the Middle East by the British Empire, even in their own words, the leaders of the British Empire did basically the exact same thing with the island of Ireland. So those are sort of inextricably linked. And so when we see them, yeah, good question. Did you find an episode
I'm not
number?
finding it. I don't know why I can't find it. I know it
Mm.
was. It wasn't in 2025. Was it 2024?
It may
Or
have
maybe
been.
even before that?
It's like within the last 5 years. Canary
Okay.
Cry
All right. Maybe I didn't go
Ireland
back far enough.
episode. Let's see. Yeah, maybe 2023.
That's wild, man. I can't believe it's been that long since we talked about it. If it had been that long,
They're bearing the history, man. They're
Yeah.
bearing the history.
Da, da, da,
Wow,
da,
I'm having a hard time
da.
pulling it up too. This is weird.
It was
What
very
have they
weird.
done? What have they done?
The Irish delete. Oh, Belfast meets Basel. Here it is. 11/11/2023. Does that sound
Ooh.
about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. 11,
Okay,
11.
here we go. Yeah, so back in it's episode number 164 of Canary Cry Radio. You're listening to Canary Cry News Talk, and yeah, this is November 11th, 2023. Parallel Troubles. Belfast meets Basel. So there
That
you go.
sounds right. Episode 164 of Canary
Yeah.
Cry Radio. Okay, go
Yep.
check it out. I think it's prescient and important background information that gives a lot of stability and insight when trying to understand what's going on over there in Belfast today. So, other than that, Gons, which I think is still tied in, we are watching, of course, a spiritual war unfold right in front of our eyes, and not a new spiritual war, but the extension and the, I would say, manifestation of an ongoing spiritual war that has been going on since the beginning of time here on Earth, going back to the garden and even before that. And one notable, I would say, episode in that war is the Tower of Babel. Okay. Where we're going to go back. We're going to have a little chat, folks. So stay with us here. And it's interesting. We've been watching in both recent, sort of media history and kind of on repeat since we've been podcasting for the past decade and a half. It's not uncommon for mainstream reporting on, hey, we found Noah's Ark. Hey, we found the Shroud of Turin. Or, this sort of scientific reporting on biblical events and archaeology. Of course, in our category of sort of fringe online Christian researchers, academics, friends like that, this is an ongoing and very deep and thorough scholarly category, ongoing forever. But in the context of cultural programming, social engineering, it's very interesting to see when the public at large, be they Christian or not, are invited to catch up on the newest archaeological finds from the Bible. Even very recently, we've got a lot of like, we found Noah's Ark again. Come check it out. The flood might be real. Genesis 6, right? But one that I don't remember happening very often. In fact, I didn't really remember it at all. Not to say that it never happened. It just was never really pointed out to me. Is just being released at a very interesting time right now by National Geographic. And there's a headline, and the headline says this: was there a real Tower of Babel? This temple is the leading contender.
Speaking of the beast system, beast system.
It's the National Geographic, by the way.
What
Carrying
did
the
I
story?
say? Did I not say National Geographic?
I don't think you mentioned it.
Okay.
Maybe I missed it. Yeah.
And we tune out sometimes. I get it.
I know.
Here it is. 4 centuries, the biblical story. Now remember, you might need to get into your little paywall passer guy there. Now remember, we're in this age, right? We're in this time. We are now. Some of the words that we use to describe right now is the age of Re-Enchantment, okay? Where the theology of the Nephilim, where Genesis 6, alien disclosure, this is all very common. sort of mainstream, even if mainstream online, it is not fringe anymore. So in that context, let's dive into National Geographic, talking about the story of the Tower of Babel. For centuries, the biblical story of the Tower of Babel has been used to explain the origins of the world's different languages and to point out the pitfalls of attempting to compete with God. I thought compete was an interesting word there, because of course we all know this, the story of the Tower of Babel, where man had come together and they said, let's build a tower to the heavens and more or less reclaim their, humanity living under the fall, under the impression that they should, and will take their seat either next to God or takes God's seat. And for National Geographic to put it in this term of like attempting to compete with God is like a very mainstream way to talk about it.
Yeah, it is, but it's also, if you study some extra biblical text, much like the Book of Enoch is regarded as commentary to some of the Genesis 6 stuff in the ancient Near East worldview, the Book of Jasher, which is even more contested than the Book of Enoch when it comes to extra biblical text, the Book of Jasher is mentioned a couple times in the Bible. I forget exactly where, and the book that we have as the Book of Jasher may not be the same Book of Jasher that is mentioned in the Bible, but nevertheless, that book has a narrative about competing with God or trying to kill gods, more specifically when it comes to the Tower of Babel. So that expounds on the idea of the ascension, Lucifer's ascension, wanting to get into heaven and dethrone him and all this kind of stuff, and goes a little further and says, hey, we want to kill God. We want to literally sit on his throne. We want to spite heaven with bows and spears and stuff like that. So there is a very literal sense of trying to take out God in the Jasher account of Babel. Yeah. So maybe they're tapping into some of those narratives to because they'll read that and be like, yeah, let's go, humanity. Let's take out this evil Yahweh or something. I don't know.
Interesting too, just kind of occurs to me that, of course, Lucifer, Satan, was cast down for his rebellion, and his strategy to continue his war on God was to enlist the help either by trickery or by other means. It's like he needed humanity, like humanity's identity as God's created being is an elevated, form than angels. This is a long time discussion in Christology, like what exactly is the hierarchy of angels versus people, and it's pretty generally understood that actually people are placed above angels in a sort of spiritual hierarchy.
Sorry about that. That was a mistake.
Lucifer's issue was that he, as an angel, sort of lusted after God's throne, got cast down with the snap of a finger. And so he's like, well, God made these humans and they're cooler than me. So maybe if I can trick them into joining my battle against God, we can actually pull something off here, which then evolves into transhumanism. And that here we are today. Bob's your uncle.
And just to overview and contextualize everything, and I think, of course, all of us are, we owe a lot to the late Dr. Michael Heiser for framing so much of our understanding of the Old Testament in the context of everything going on, not just in the New Testament, but today. Dr. Heiser talked often about the three rebellions, which was the Garden of Eden, which we all kind of know about the Garden of Eden as the central core of the issue. But if you study Jesus's ministry on earth, he was reversing three of the rebellions, which was the Garden of Eden, Genesis 6, and the third one is the Tower of Babel. So, I think if you think of it in those terms, what are the three different elements that are being represented to humanity as the issues or the topics at hand? It's really fascinating that Genesis 6 really came into the forefront the last couple of years. I would imagine the Tower of Babel will become just as much
that is such a good point
in politics.
That is such an interesting point. Yes, because we bring up how lately, if if you've been in the game for a while and paying attention recently, you're like, oh, suddenly everybody's talking about Nephilim. This comes through the UFO disclosure conversation. Everybody knows about Nephilim. Everybody's talking Genesis 6, which is kind of the second in the lineup of rebellions that you talk about. The garden, the flood, and then the Tower of Babel. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we had this recent cycle of mainstream media saying, okay, we found Noah's Ark. We found Noah's Ark. Hey, everybody, we found Noah's Ark. So they're hitting on that second of the rebellions. And then maybe that's what struck me so much yesterday when Nat Geo comes out and says, okay, we found Tower of Babel. Boom. Introducing the third rebellion to the mainstream conversation. Okay. For centuries, the biblical story of the Tower of Babel has been used to explain the origins of the world's different languages. I gotta stop going down rabbit holes, but National Geographic's emphasis on the language aspect of the Tower of Babel, right, as the sort of religious explanation for multiple languages, and not talking about the Tower of Babel in its like cosmic importance as one of the primary rebellions that sets up our entire relationship with God. But okay, and to point out the pitfalls of attempting to compete with God. But did the tower really exist? The answer could be yes. Both archaeologists and historians believe the Tower of Babel from the book of Genesis actually had a historical counterpart in the ancient Mesopotamia, Etemenanke. Okay, Etemenanke. Get used to saying that word, Gons. But though modern research has revealed plenty of potential evidence that such a structure not only existed but was known throughout the ancient world, the case for a real-life Tower of Babel is far from closed. So you can already see the setup, the framing of this. Yes, okay, the Tower of Babel existed, but as they say it, it's coming from the assumption that the story of the Tower of Babel is not literally true, right? They're saying, okay, there's a historical counterpart to the story of the Tower of Babel. And why not just say like, oh yeah, this is the Tower of Babel that was written about. Here's more about the tower's chaotic history and why it continues to intrigue modern researchers. All right, Nat Geo bringing us the theology on the Tower of Babel. Tower of Babel's description in Genesis. Though tradition holds that the prophet Moses wrote Genesis and the other 4 books of the Jewish Torah, modern historians believe it was actually written by a variety of authors at different points in ancient history. The book tells of a God who created earth and humanity, then destroyed most of creation with a massive flood after humans proved corrupt, violent, and sinful. God spared Noah and his family, who weighed out the flood on a custom-built ark. They're like, look, we're already getting into the Tower of Babel. We don't need to mention the Nephilim here, okay? We'll let them make the Nephilim connection themselves. We don't need to include it. Chapter 11 of Genesis describes the aftermath of these events, portraying a planet with a single language and a unified people who moved to the land of Shinar, thought to correspond to the territory of ancient Babylonia in southern Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. Despite living in unity and harmony, ultimately, human pride drives them to build a city with a tower that reaches all the way up to heaven. Furious, God comes to earth. Now, just to mention, they talk about build a city with a tower that reaches all the way up to heaven. It's been a conversation in the weird, fringy Christian academia of whether this means that the that the tower reached physically, vertically up to the firmament, or if there was some sort of like portal or Stargate situation, you know, some sort of more something like that. Of course, National Geographic, not going to get into the weeds there, but good to mention. Furious, God's comes to Earth and confounds, they put in quotes, the human languages. Now speaking a variety of languages and no longer able to understand one another, the humans abandoned the tower and the city. The account closes by mentioning that the city was named Babel, in parentheses, Babylon. The term is similar to the Hebrew verb balal, which means to confound or to mix. So similar that some scholars believe its use was part of a long-standing tradition of Hebrew wordplay. I do like this mention of the long-standing tradition of Hebrew wordplay because that is something that is a vital thing to understand when reading in the original languages, and actually is sort of the key to opening up a lot of context and understanding in the Old Testament. So I don't, whether National Geographic mentioning it here in this case gives so much to the reader or not, it is sort of an echo of that important way of approaching the early Hebrew writings. Okay, searching for the true Tower of Babel. Was part of the true tower left behind? That question motivated generations of explorers, historians, and Christian believers. And over the years, various figures suggested a variety of possible locations for the one-time structure. I also noted in this list of people that are motivated by this question, right? That question motivated generations of explorers, historians, and Christian believers. Now, they don't say Christians, right? They say
Right.
Christian believers, meaning talking about a category of Christians who believe the Tower of Babel story or the
Interesting.
Tower of Babel narrative. So
Yeah.
kind of giving an out for some population of Christians to, like, I don't know, say, I'm not motivated by this at all or something. I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Many held that Akar Kuf, a Mesopotamian city that once served as the capital of one of ancient Babylonians' most powerful dynasties, had inspired the biblical account. Others thought the ruins might be in a city now identified as Borsippa. Quote, in the Middle Ages. Now, this caught my attention because we talked about the Middle Ages last episode and how important this concept of the Middle Ages is in this broad overarching meta of, like, okay, secular and scientific world, we need to reckon with the unstoppable freight train that is the age of re-enchantment. All right, we don't want to go back to the Middle Ages. Are we in the Middle Ages? And then coming in on the Tower of Babel article, in the Middle Ages, there would hardly have been visible remains of the Tower of Babylon, meaning that it was difficult, if not impossible, to carry out the identification on the part of travelers who visited the region, writes ancient historian Juan Luis Montera Finoyos. Just a random mention that, like, hey, we're talking about the Tower of Babel. We may have found it. But if you were a peasant in the Middle Ages, you wouldn't have found it. Okay, thank you. Only one of those early explorers came close to finding the structure now most associated with the Tower of Babel. Etemenanki emerges as the leading contender. Today, historians and archaeologists alike think the tower was inspired by the ziggurat of Etemenanki, whose ruins were rediscovered by German archaeologist Robert Koldewey in 1913.
Nazis.
Right.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly a German archaeologist in 1913. I mean, this is straight out of Indiana Jones and, Raiders of the Lost Ark or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that's what you got to imagine. This was the early Nazis finding these, again, as we know, their search for occult, their interest in the occult, their search for artifacts and archaeological sites that are important occultally important, which connects to modern elites search, a specific one thanks to WikiLeaks, mentioning the Temple of Gilgamesh. So it fits right into this broad meta narrative of like, hey, these archaeological sites have been really important to world powers and world elites, whether they be humans or lizard people, for a very long time, but doing it in a really classy National Geographic way.
Yeah, of course.
The reason is simple. Andrew George, an emeritus professor of Babylonian at SOAS University in London, tells Nat Geo via email. Now, just to mention, he says the reason is simple. Our buddy Andrew, who is a professor of Babylonian, like it doesn't say like Babylonian studies, Babylonian, I don't know, history, Babylonian magic. It's just a professor of Babylonian. Tells Nat Geo via email, quote, "It was a small tower," talking about Etemenanki, "in the city that..."
Oh, it says tall tower. It says tall.
Sorry,
it was a tall
you're right.
tower.
Thank you. "It was a tall tower in the city that in Greek was called Babylon, in Hebrew, Babel," he says. Despite the existence of similar buildings in ancient Mesopotamia, the building's location in Babylon is key. Though the building has long been destroyed, scholars have proven its existence through a combination of ancient written records, such as the writing of Greek historian Herodotus, and a variety of cuneiform texts, and more modern archaeological research. The building was a ziggurat, a kind of temple tower common in ancient Mesopotamia. These pyramid-like structures, whose name derives from the Akkadian word zakarum, quote, "to build high," were erected in tribute to a city's patron god. Their proximity to royal structures has led researchers to speculate that they existed to highlight connections between local royalty and city deities. Or they built it close to royal structures because, you know, the kings wanted their Stargate or their portal close at hand.
Yes.
These structures were more than pretty pyramids. Yes, they were. They were more than pretty pyramids. Linked to an on-the-ground shrine, the ziggurat was likely considered an important meeting place for both sky and earth deities. As a result, says George, such sites had immense religious importance. Devoted to the powerful Mesopotamian god Marduk, Babylon's patron deity, Etemenanki was likely an impressive structure. Early excavations at the site confirm the building was built with sun-dried mud and bricks and kiln-baked bitumen bricks that held together with mud and mortar. Then in the 1990s, researchers working in trenches opened up by archaeologists nearly a century earlier discovered an intriguing stele covered in drawings. Now, you know what? I meant to look up this word, Stele. Let me see if I can figure out, because they use this word without defining it.
It's a tall, slender stone monument, often with writing carved into its surface in archaeology.
Like a stone totem pole or something.
Yeah.
So they found an intriguing stele covered in drawings and inscriptions about Etemenanki. The, quote, Tower of Babylon stele, as it is now known, was a gold mine of information about the ziggurat. I had no idea that there existed an archaeological, basically Stonehenge, that had sort of a written history of the Tower of Babel on it. Had you heard of this?
I believe, yes. I believe this is where a lot of Mike Heiser's work on the Tower of Babel came from, because he had theorized that Etemenanki's the idea of Etemenanki was the Tower of Babel, the origin story. Like this article so far, it's really echoing a lot of what Dr. Heiser talked about as well, because
you don't say.
Yeah, you don't think. Yeah,
don't say.
I know. Because part of what he also pointed out was that the entire concept in the temple was built as a not just a cosmic gateway, but it had to do with Marduk worship. And they mentioned Marduk specifically here. And Marduk is never mentioned in the biblical account. But again, if you study the sort of milieu of the worldview at the time, then Marduk comes up quite a bit, and
Yeah.
it's very fascinating. So it's no surprises. I haven't been surprised by anything yet. I mean, they are really just summarizing a lot of Heiser's work
Yeah.
without giving him any credit and without bringing in the supernatural narratives that kind of really is the main point of all this. But of course, National Geographic's going to make it about archaeology and language and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and we're not going to read the whole article. In fact, I'm just going to finish this paragraph in the next one. But for me, during my sort of research time yesterday, this was sort of a fun article to stumble upon. And I go, oh, okay, this might be interesting. I'll bring this to the show. But really, what came next is what blew my mind and fit into the meta that we've been, seeing for a very long time. So just to finish this part out, the Tower of Babylon Steely, thank you to, who was it? Somebody in the chat says, oh, you should pronounce it Steely. We'll call it Steely. The Tower of Babylon Steely, as it is now known, was a gold mine of information about the ziggurat. The researchers have even used its drawings to create a convincing model of the 90-meter high, about 295 feet temple it describes. Edamananki would have been a key structure within Babylon's temple complex. It remains unclear when the Babylonians first built it, though George estimates it was constructed between 1500 and 1000 BCE, timing that would align with the authorship of many Old Testament texts. Now, it goes on, and it kind of gives you what you would expect from National Geographic, okay? They go in, they say this could be it, it might not be it, but it's interesting because this is what the Hebrews would have seen and they would have written about it. But who knows? Could be it, could not be it. We'll find out. Kind of gives you your basic kind of secular National Geographic ending to it.
Just to point out, too, Etemenanki means house of the foundation of heaven and earth.
Ooh,
that's what it means, just so we are aware. I don't know if the article mentions that, but
now
it's good to know.
We zoom out because that's what we're doing here on the show, right? We're not just finding fun headlines. We're not just having fun reading and seeing but we are understanding, connecting the dots and trying to see the bigger picture of culture, of this age of re-enchantment, of the institutional attempt to maybe pre-bunk people or usher secular society into what they know is coming, but try to kind of build in the triggers to guide populations in the way that they want to go. So this mainstream article from Nat Geo is an interesting, notable first step for them to, after bringing in Genesis 6, Noah, the flood, connecting it to Genesis 6, UFO disclosure, getting everybody ready, right? Now they've moved on, like you said, to the third rebellion, the Tower of Babel. Hey, yeah, it was probably real, okay? It's not all crazy. Check it out. And in the context of the Canary Cry theory of everything, the Tower of Babel is very important because it's not just the story of, of architecture and hubris of man and an explanation for our current predicament as humans and our relationship to God. It's not just that, but we also see that reflected in the technological movement towards the beast system. Transhumanism, the technate, the man's almost, I won't say eternal yearning, but since the garden, our instinct to try to solve our own problems. And how do we solve our own problems without turning to God? As a product of the fall, the world got harsher, things got harder, and instead of turning back to God, we rely on our own creative power, which is that reflection of the image of God that we were made in. The thing that the adversary is so lustful of and knows that if he can trick human beings into turning that creative power, their technology to solve their own problems against God, he might stand a chance. Poor guy. He doesn't even see it coming. And in this age of AI, as where the economy, the social structure, in the words of UNESCO, civilization itself is shifting in this very sort of abstract, kind of big cosmic way. At the same time, we are struggling daily on a personal level and on a societal level with AI. And here we know that this is a spiritual thing, right? AI, in many different ways, has parallels to the story of the Golem of Prague. This is man infusing intellect into earth, into rocks, into silicon, using inscriptions, perhaps even inscriptions of magic learned by the Watchers who came down and taught us technology, so that we could continue to rely on ourselves and keep turning from God. AI, perhaps a method or a vector for which spiritual entities, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, demons, however you want to say it, can kind of peek their way and communicate into this realm, talk to humans, and continue to lead us astray through AI psychosis, control mechanisms, etc. The Atlantic comes out with this article. And of course, The Atlantic, owned by Bill Gates's widow, not so much a news platform, but more of a culture coding project, a social engineering project, here to guide the understanding and the feelings, mostly of the secular world, in one direction on the political and cultural compass. But The Atlantic comes out with this article headlined, "There is already a word for the deep moral failures of AI." Now, as we've been following,
destroy humans?
Okay, I will destroy humans.
Artificial intelligence.
There it is. We just can't stay away from it. AI. And of course, from our perspective, following AI for a decade and a half or more, we've been constantly floored, by the roadmap and the strategy in which AI has sort of infected society or civilization, and see the many pitfalls, but not just as a technology, but as a almost its own entity in the spiritual war, its own technology, not just a material technology, but a spiritual technology. And as we're here watching the mainstream media meta, the mainstream media narrative, have to reckon with and guide the secular population into the undeniable re-enchantment of culture, they're always very clever with the way that they do it. And we are watching and experiencing the age of re-enchantment, where the world as a whole is having a reckoning on whether everything is material, whether the product of the Enlightenment, of scientism, these sorts of things, is really the best way to understand reality. They're finding, no, it isn't. There is something unseen. There is something spiritual. And whether or not the influences in their lives are as of yet, guiding them to Christ or to some sort of new age thing, or perhaps something else, we do see this happening on a broad scale. And it's happening so intensely that the Atlantic now must participate. And here they are to tell us there is already a word for the deep moral failures of AI. What is that word? It says it right in the subheadline. 2 words. It's sin. The author writes, "For the past few years, I've been troubled by a word, and that word is sin." That's classic. It's really interesting.
Good job, guys over at the Atlantic. Nice work, everybody.
It's such a
catching up to several thousands of years of philosophy and theology, and but But this author in 2026 is just really wrestling with the words.
Well,
I
and
love
it
it. I love it.
is.
It's great.
The
It's great.
word sin is such a stumbling block because outside of Christ, right, we're taught that we're perfect just the way we are inherently good. Postmodernism, even if you do a bad thing, you probably did it for a good reason. We can't blame you for doing bad things. There is no inherent rock solid moral system of the world, right? There's no God that sets standards for humanity. This conversation of morals and ethics, especially in the AI realm, right? Because they're talking about AI ethics. How do we make sure that AI is ethical or moral? Well, that's very hard to do if we don't recognize that there are foundational cosmic morals and ethics. Well, that's why we'll hire Gnostic priests to work at Google to help us make sure the AI is ethical, right? This is a big conversation. And even in my own personal conversations with non-Christians, the one word that is really, really triggering is the word sin, because a huge stumbling block for Christianity for a lot of people is the recognition that we're not perfect, that we're not good, that this baseline understanding that, hey, we do need a savior. A savior is not optional. We need a savior, and whether we know it or not, we are searching for it. And like the Tower of Babel, we are often trying to play the role of God in our own lives and in the world, not for nothing, but because if we can sit on the throne of God in civilization, that means that we get to decide what is right, what is wrong. And surprise, surprise, we are very good at finding reasons, justifications, rationalizations for any bad thing we do to actually not be so bad, or in fact be good. Right? This is like our eternal struggle. And so the word sin often is the hardest thing for non-believers to cope with, because it's very foundational. So that's also why I think, again, this is the Atlantic, the liberal bastion of protecting democracy and humanism and all these sorts of things. So of course, first sentence, laying it out, any secular reader who reads this will instantly feel a connection with the author, because they also are troubled by a word, and that word is sin. I keep reaching for it because it seems to be the only term strong enough to describe the new forms of dehumanization that artificial intelligence has introduced. Even though calling something a sin sounds embarrassing to me, which is something a lot of people feel in the secular world, like throwing salt over your shoulder or stowing a lucky penny in your pocket. So superstition, right? He's calling this word sin as a superstition. And yet, in the logic of this first thing, sin is a form of dehumanization that artificial intelligence is introducing. And from the spiritual perspective, the Christian perspective, sin is dehumanizing. It is what pulls us apart from our original purpose and identity in the garden as God creates us. And the question will always be, well, what is a human? Well, by the believer's standpoint, God created us in his image. We had an original form. That is what human was supposed to be. Adam and Eve before the fall. That is essentially human. And then after the fall comes sin and separates us from that original form of humanity. So yes, sin is dehumanization. It is dehumanizing. And so these are very specific, sort of deep theological terms that the writer is using. Now, we'll see how they get used further on, because of course we know how this works. 99% truth. It only takes 1% deception in the adversary's grand strategy to pull us away from God. Continuing. The problem is, I don't know what else to call it when companies market digital girlfriends to the heartsick and young, or when they hawk robot companions to the lonely and old, or when a billionaire explains that he intends to sell intelligence trained on humanity's stolen intellectual property back to us as a utility like electricity or water. These developments are not just wrong, they feel to me like something deeper and darker. Quote, I met the banker and it felt like sin. Patterson Hood croons in the great drive-by trucker song Sinkhole. I'd substitute chatbot for banker. Perhaps I shouldn't be surprised then that the critics, living and dead, who capture my unease about the AI revolution, who discuss it with appropriate moral gravity, are or were Christians. So this author in the Atlantic is saying, look, Christians are the ones who have done the thinking, who have the language, who have the long history of theology that is needed to accurately understand where we are with AI, whether they are living or dead. Christians are the ones that are prepared to talk about this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
Hardcore, right? Intense.
It's hardcore,
right?
but also it's some of what the story I brought that we'll touch on after this one locked in my head for me too. Like now I'm starting to see why the institutional side of Christianity and the cultural and political side of Christianity are starting to discuss re-enchantment.
Yep.
It's making sense to me.
It's all coming together, baby.
It's all coming together.
All coming together. And if you're new to the show or you're not quite getting hit as hard by this segment as we seem to be, make sure to catch up on the last handful of episodes of this show, okay? Monday's show, last week's Wednesday show, last week's Monday show. It's really incredible how God has been building the show as a whole here over 4 or 5 episodes, but including our long, 14-year history of talking about this. But it's really incredible the way that this is coming together. Let's see, where was I? Perhaps I shouldn't be surprised then that the critics living and dead who capture my unease about the AI revolution, who discuss it with appropriate moral gravity, are or were Christians. They are or were people comfortable using words like sin. They include Catholic writers such as social critic Ivan Illich and the philosophers Charles Taylor and Jennifer Frey, as well as the Orthodox substacker Paul Kingsnorth, the Presbyterian theologian Carl Trueman, and Pope Leo with his new AI-focused encyclical Magnifica Humanitas.
What's missing is Basil and Gons from Canary Cry Radio and Face Like the Sun really laying the bricks for nearly 20 years on the topic. But hey, I can't win them all.
There are times, I've said this before, and this is one of those times. There are times when I wish I was just a listener of this podcast, because it would just be, this would be suddenly, again, the fullness of time would open up, and the many years of talking about the fringe, weird, obscure, mad absurdity of what's going on in the world, and the whole thing comes all the way around and goes, oh, we as Canarians are particularly equipped for this exact moment in history. Maybe more than
saying it for anyway.
Yeah. I know. It's good though. God confirms these things over and over again. We are fallen. We are human. We need these things confirmed to us regularly, often, and repeating on into the future. The latter two figures, he's talking about Pope Leo and Carl Trueman. The latter two figures in particular have struck a chord with me because they acknowledge that the crisis posed by technological modernity is primarily an anthropological one. Quote, what is man is the question of our time. Trueman writes in his new book, The Desecration of Man. Pope Leo, in his encyclical, similarly frames life today as defined by the, quote, paradox of material progress and anthropological regression. Leo writes that people have more and more, yet live less and less like human beings, a tension that AI is likely to exacerbate. Do you have a comment?
Before you, just the article that we were going to push off to maybe Monday from the Gospel Coalition. That whole article, which was titled "Does Disenchantment or Desecration Describe Our Current Crisis?" Yes, is about the book by Carl Trueman, "The Desecration of Man."
Yeah, it's crazy. There's so much
Christians
more.
are picking up on this. Yeah,
There's so much more that we were going to add to this episode, but we just couldn't do it because we don't have the time. So this is going to pick back up on Monday.
It has to, because it directly relates to all things that we've discussed eschatologically, but also spiritually, supernaturally. The re-enchantment topic that we've been pressing on, thanks to our friend Carl Tykrib over the last 10, 15 years. It's just all, spiraling into this cohesive thing that ultimately, I think the great takeaway, if I had to summarize it real briefly right now, is that the counterfeit of the gospel is really starting to take form in a way, which is uncomfortable for some, but it's pretty obvious for me. But I don't know. We'll get into some of that after you're done with
and
this
the timing couldn't be better for people like in the YouTube chat, Adrian0004, who just posts in the chats, was y'all taken off YouTube for a while? I've been subbed for years, but just now seeing you again. We are constantly, even though we got the YouTube channels back about a year ago now, there are 250,000 people who have not yet made it back to the show, and it is the perfect time to make it back to the show. Make sure to catch the last maybe 4 or 5 episodes when you have the chance, because God brought you here for a reason. All right.
Amen.
Leo writes that people have more and more yet to live less and less like human beings, a tension that AI is likely to exacerbate. Again, even going back to the article from last episode about the the humanness. They say creativity is currency, but as believers, we understand our creativity is what is the image of God, our co-creative power. He made us creative in a way he didn't make any other creation creative. And not just animals, but also angels are not creative in the same way that human beings are creative. And so that's a very special thing. And culture, even mainstream culture now, is saying, hey, yeah, we're moving to the AI age. It is your humanness that is your currency in this, technate that we're moving into. So it's very important. Many AI critics who write from a secular perspective, even the phrase secular perspective
coming from a mainstream article is really interesting.
Is insane. I've told the story before that my non-believing friends, I will say like, oh yeah, well, the secular world says this, and they go, secular? What does that mean? I'm like, secular, like non-believers. And they're like, I've never heard that word in my life. I'm like, yeah, I know, because it's the water you swim in. You've never had to categorize yourself as anything. So the fact that the Atlantic is using the phrase is a big deal in sort of a subtle way. Many AI critics who write from a secular perspective, by contrast, tend to speak about artificial intelligence in utilitarian terms. Technology journalists, academic experts, and activists typically emphasize the AI industry's prodigious environmental toll, its reliance on intellectual property theft, its exacerbation of racialized algorithmic bias, its use in the dangerous autonomous weapon systems, its role in warrantless surveillance systems, its exploitation of cheap foreign labor markets, its upending of domestic labor market at home, and the like. So he's explaining, even though the secular world can name a whole laundry list of things, of reasons and ways why AI is bad, but it's missing something, and he talks about it here. These concerns are pressing, arguably the most pressing issues presented by AI, and spotlighting them is good and right. They are measurable harms that can be quantified, and that regulations and policy can be built around. The Pope writes about how many of these in his encyclical, but an overly pragmatic focus risks being morally and philosophically shallow and leaving comparatively underexplored the more foundational questions that new large language models pose. After all, even if these concrete problems with AI were magically solved, if the environmental externalities were fixed, if better protections for workers were all put in place, if artificial intelligence was not pressed into the service of war or surveillance or naked profit, we would still be left with a technology that radically unsettles many traditional concepts of human dignity and meaning, and that threaten to outsource the most interesting aspects of our life and labor to machines. So the Atlantic is admitting right now, even if we solved every one of the secular critiques of AI, if it didn't harm the environment, if it didn't take jobs away, if it didn't do all those bad things, it still has a core original problem. And the implication that is not yet said is that as Christians, we call that original sin, an unsolvable problem that the workings of our own technology and solving of our own secular problems can never fix the original sin that is a product of the fall of mankind and our original separation from our original humanity. And so the Atlantic is laying this out, this hyper Christian theology in the context of AI, right on its front pages. And while giving credit to Christians and Christian thinking and Christian theology, is basically retelling the story of humanity from the biblical perspective in a really heavy and interesting way. Any comments before I keep going?
Yeah, I mean, this has been one of at least my points, and I know you echoed it as well, which is, that there's a human heart problem above all things practical, or it's almost like the Atlantic is admitting here that the issue is spiritual, that it is not a mechanical or physical issue. This is a spiritual problem.
Yeah.
And what AI has done, interestingly enough, is bring that realization to a world of materialists. They are recognizing the problem. So maybe in that sense, hallelujah,
I know.
they
that's kind of where I'm at.
Right. A lot of them will turn to the truth there. But I can also see why the church is being set up, the institutional side of church is being set up to be the facilitators of that spiritual conversation, meaning the Pope coming out recently. And, I'll bring the Christian sort of issue with the institution side in the next article. But yeah, it's very interesting how the problem is being recognized at the level of the Atlantic, which is, reflective of the greater secular culture here. So
which they have to do, because as we've covered, they have undeniably understand that we are in the age of re-enchantment. There's nothing they can do about it. They can't stop the re-enchantment, right? So now what we're seeing is sort of the battlefield, the spiritual battlefield, be set up now for exactly what the contours and perspectives of that battle will turn into. This is a really important sort of let's say resetting of the chessboard, because amen, God keeps winning, right? Even when it doesn't feel like it sometimes. God's sovereignty keeps winning, and the enemy has to keep adapting to the new battle. And so, our one uneasiness in the age of re-enchantment is like, okay, now everybody's going to realize the spiritual nature of everything, but we know the adversary isn't just going to give up and everybody's going to turn to Christ. And understanding what the contours of the battlefield look like now will help us, help our listeners, and hopefully anybody who finds what we're doing here not get sort of tricked or confused into what this next stage of the spiritual battle looks like. Today, AI puts man even more at stake as many of Silicon Valley's leaders attempt to bring about a digital successor species. Listen to that. As many of Silicon Valley's leaders attempt to bring about a digital successor species based on the belief that humanity's evolutionary destiny is to usher in a higher form of intelligence.
Oh,
Defending
you know, sorry, before you go on, I just need to comment on what some people call that whole thing is,
Aliens.
yeah.
aliens, mind children, all
Yeah, the
these.
mind children. Yeah. But I just want to point out that there's a reason why the whole disclosure thing and the alien conversation is happening parallel to this advancement in AI. I think
Mhm.
that it's not an accident, but continue.
Exactly. Defending, I know that's the thing. It's like, it's hard to try to explain every single line to somebody who might be new because it's literally everything. Like this article is just literally
Yeah.
everything. And so somebody who might not have the context, all I can do is just invite you to at least listen to the last 4 Canary Cry News Talk episodes. I think, we've been in this weird place where we're like, weird, things are weird, news is weird. Let's just follow kind of what the Holy Spirit is laying out for us episode by episode. And it kind of is, I would say, the closest thing we have to a 101 course for where we're at is the last 4 episodes. All right. Defending humanity against its digital doppelganger requires having a positive conception of what humanity is in the first place. As the Pope writes in his encyclical, quote, technological progress, valuable in itself, requires careful discernment of the anthropological vision that guides it and ends it. Guides it and ends.
And the ends it pursues.
Ends it pursues. Thank you.
Yeah.
He warns against a technoculture that displaces its burdens, quote, on the most vulnerable in pursuit of the supposed optimization of the species. Christianity has a clear anthropological vision, asserting that the purpose of the human species is to exist in the image of its creator, to love God and one another, and to spread life on earth and steward its creatures. So right here in the Atlantic, they're saying the value of the Christian anthropological vision, the Christian theology, is that our purpose is to exist in the image of God, to love one another, and to multiply and steward the earth, which is just mind-blowingly accurate for the Atlantic, right?
Yeah. It's
Dig
true.
into
It's
that a
true.
bit, but it's like it's so axiomatically correct that I don't want to get into it, but it's just mind-blowing that it's in the Atlantic. It's Many secular thinkers can struggle to articulate a clear definition of what humanity is. As Truman writes, quote, can the term dehumanized even have a meaning if human nature itself is an abstraction, an empty cipher? In his recent book, Language Machines, the NYU professor and tech writer Leif Werby writes that contemporary critics tend to assert what he calls remainder humanism, whereby the human here is defined by technology's creep, but only negatively. In other words, the definition of human is implicitly reduced to the narrowing set of behaviors, traits, and capacities that machines do not yet possess, which leaves secular humanists defending the shrinking ground that is left. So,
hey, we've been calling that for a long time. The molecules in motion was so like, anti-God, and now they're like, oh shoot, we're just molecules in motion. We don't have any meaning if we stretch that logic out, and they're running out of any kind of logical or philosophical runway. So we've been calling that for a long time. But yeah, it's interesting that they're
to put that plainly, what the Atlantic is saying here is, hey, secular humanists have no good, effective understanding of what humans are at their core. And of course, the fact that they don't have it is because they refuse to acquiesce to God, essentially. Right. It's the original sin of the garden, and that original sin means that they can never have a true understanding of what humanity is. And in fact, The only thing that they can say, secular humanists, is that we are those things that machines can't do. And where we're coming to in technology and in society is that these machines can do more and more of those things. So a secular humanist must admit that what a human is keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and less and less. So that by their own definitions, humanity must be disappearing entirely and being replaced by machines if you are sitting in the sort of postmodern secular humanist worldview, which means it's sand on the beach when the tide comes in.
Right. You know what I'm realizing too, and this is, I've had this thought before, but it's really kind of hitting home, is that a belief in God does not bring about salvation. Right? Like we kind of know this conceptually.
Even the devil believes in God.
Right. So and we've talked about it before, but it's just interesting how even a culture that where 100% of the people on the earth believe God exists, there is a very specific person that actually provides that individual and, holistic cosmic salvation for mankind. And I find it interesting that those things are becoming, we're starting to parse that out even more, because, you go back to this thing back here about what it means to be human and become an image of its creator, to love God and one another, and to spread life on earth. Sounds good, but there's no mention of Jesus in this at all.
Right. Right.
There's no,
that's
it's
key here. Yes.
Yeah. It's really interesting how it's starting to dwindle down to the real fundamentals here of what salvation really is and how. So.
Exactly. And remember, and this is even biblical, because the Bible says, yes, even the demons, know scripture. Even the demons believe that God exists. And we're told to test the spirits in the Bible.
Yes.
And how do you test the spirits? You test the spirits by seeing if they,
acknowledge that Jesus came in the flesh. Yeah.
Jesus came in the flesh, lived a perfect life, died for our sins, resurrected 3 days later, and is the only way to salvation, the only way to be reconciled with God, right? So even though, and here we are, we're sitting here, we're trying to figure out, this is crazy that the Atlantic is writing about this. This is crazy that they're admitting that Christianity is like the only way to think about the world right now. And we go, okay, but this can't be it. Like the devil's not giving up, right? They're not
right.
What's going on?
This is like go time. This is like the final frontier for the devil.
Right. So we're seeing
put on the Christian cloak.
Exactly. And so we're sitting here, you and I, reading this and talking before the show, and we're like, whoa, this is incredible, but something is suspicious. There has to be something suspicious. Yeah. And in the age of re-enchantment, where everybody on their own is being guided to the fact of a spiritual reality, this is where it gets really precarious, especially for Christians, because you'll notice what's missing here, and that is the actual gospel. If you test, quote unquote, test the spirits with this article, it says nothing about the literal manifestation of God as Jesus, God's son, coming down, living a perfect life, dying and raising again, the whole thing, right? As Jesus being the only way to salvation. It has so much good biblical understanding here.
Mm-hmm.
It is missing
good
that.
Leaning on theology in culture absent of such things philosophically.
And I think that is the key to everything that comes from here on out, because this is not the end of it for this episode. We got more for next episode. And this is an opportunity for Christians to really kind of miss the point about where we are in the age of re-enchantment and what the battlefield now looks like. But it's right there in the Bible. Test the spirits. And so far, no mention of the actual gospel of Jesus Christ, no matter how many good things they say about Christendom, no mention of Jesus. But what is it? What is the diversion? What is going to be presented as a stand-in for the gospel? Because as one last ditch effort, to guide people away from the gospel, but it has to be in this context of Christianity is good. We all got to love Christianity, but the gospel's not there. So what is? And it shows up here in a second. And it's right here, actually. It says, what Christian humanism offers, with its assertion that humans are made in the imago Dei, is a choice other than Silicon Valley extremism or remainder humanism. If what makes humanity special is not our capabilities, automatable or not, with the notion that we spring from a transcendent source, then what the robots can or cannot do is in some sense irrelevant. ChatGPT was not made in the image of God, no matter how impressive its facsimile becomes. A secular humanism that cannot find a similarly deep line of reasoning is one that may not be adequate to defend human dignity in the AI era. And I think this is exactly where we are moving on, okay? And this is subtle, and a ton of people are going to miss it. Like the Bible says, if possible, even the elect will be deceived in the end time. And this is so subtle, so elegant, so genius of the adversary to set up moving forward where Christianity is undeniable. But if you're trying to make people miss the point, give Christianity everything but omit the gospel. Call it Christian humanism. The article ends here in one last paragraph. I am not arguing that one must be or become more religious to fully appreciate the challenge posed by the rise of AI. So he's saying right here, I'm not saying you got to be saved. I'm just saying you got to be a Christian humanist. You don't need to accept Jesus. You just got to be a Christian humanist, where you can be a Christian but not saved, right? And he says here, let me read that again. I'm not arguing that one must be or become more religious to fully appreciate the challenge posed by the rise of AI. That would make me, a not especially observant Presbyterian, a hypocrite. So you're even saying I'm a Presbyterian. Don't worry, I'm not like a really good one.
Yeah, but the gospel, the whole thing was that we are all hypocrites. The part of our sin nature is that even lie. It's like, dude, come on, man.
He says himself, he's still uncomfortable with sin, with the word sin. He's embarrassed by the word sin, right? Yeah. And so that is the exact point of why the word sin is such a stumbling block for so many, is because we can't admit that we are hypocrites. That is what the gospel is. It's the message of the gospel that is different from Christian humanism, because the gospel requires us to say we are hypocrites. We are imperfect. We are sinners. And that's why Jesus is needed. And if this guy, not to rag on Presbyterians, but this guy says he's Presbyterian, he's Christian, but no, I'm not a hypocrite. Okay,
come on. You're missing like one of the biggest. Yeah,
I would never admit my own sinful nature. Okay, I'm uncomfortable with sin. I love Christian humanism. I love Christian theology, just like a demon might know Christian theology. I know Christian theology. I think it's good, but the absence of the gospel is this stumbling block that is the subtle, almost imperceptible trap that many are going to miss in these days. Even as more and more people are coming to Christianity, there will be this Christianity available to the masses called Christian humanism, which knows and loves the Bible, Christian theology, all that kind of stuff, but omits the one thing required for salvation, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it finishes out here. But I do think that one must start from the premise that humans have some kind of universal nature or essence that must be safeguarded from technological encroachment. Otherwise, appreciating what large language models and their peddlers wish to take from us becomes too difficult. If secularists flinch at calling this taking what Pope Leo calls big tech's dehumanizing ambition a sin, they'll need to find another word for it. And that's the end of the article. article.
I like the Atlantic defining what sin is. That's good.
Amazing.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. It's amazing. And on the show and in our own lives, Guns, we've been kind of tripping out the past couple of years, like, oh my gosh, what is going on in the world? What is going on with this revival? What is going on with the elites? What is going on? There's this weird acquiescence in a way to Christendom, and yet there has to be some sort of trap involved. They can't just be
you gotta
culture to Christendom. There has to be some sort of deception here, and I think this is it. This is the deception.
For any good trap to work, you need something enticing enough for whatever your prey or whatever you're trying to catch will actually step into the trap and forget that they might get trapped. It has to be desirable enough for them to step in and try to grab the thing that's being tempted, the carrot on the stick, if you will. So
it's so
really
funny,
interesting.
it's so simple, right? I mean, I'm blown away. I'm like having an epiphany coming, for this episode, and like reading these articles that we have and like finally seeing what's been a bit of a mystery over the past couple of years. But it's so simple in the end. Like, of course, the one last little diversion would simply be the gospel, right? It would be Jesus. It would be Jesus as the Son of God. I probably would have told you that before too. Like, this is why on the internet it's so popular to like question other people's salvations, or like this is why Christians fight each other all the time about like, well, you're wrong about this or you're wrong about this, and we get very nasty at each other and we have division in the church and stuff like this. Like, we're already susceptible to this, and so we would say we don't make a practice of this, but if we were going to, we always say, as long as we have the salvation part in common with another Christian, as long as we have the gospel, who Jesus is, what he did, why it's so important, why it's the only way, like, we don't fight really with anybody. I'm not going to get in a fight with some Christian about Genesis 6. I'm not going to call somebody some nasty words because they think something about the New Testament that I don't think about. As long as that person has the gospel straight, I say, hey, we're good, right? We're good. It's all good. I'm not going to argue with you. So I would have said that already. We know that this missing piece of the gospel is the most important part, but to see that it's of course, it's the linchpin of the entire destiny of humanity in these end times, that it is the one subtle thing when Christendom is, again, regains this sort of strength and attention, that would so easily be missed by people who are around us.
Yep. And this, it's interesting that this article ends with Christian humanism, because that's where I would like to land today's episode, in the context of the Re-Enchantment. Here we go. The American song, maybe. Re-Enchantment. Yeah, there you go. It works. Man, we were spot on with this jingle, Jonathan F. I don't remember when he sent this. Must have been a few years ago. But yeah, we are definitely in the re-enchantmentatious period of history.
And before you get into this, I want to give a shout out in the YouTube message, Rusty Shackelford 0991, who says the parable of the wheat and the tares, let them grow together. I mean, that
spot on.
Taking such a new, real, intense. That explains everything right now. We are in the age where the wheat and the tares must come up together, and the threshing floor is where it will all be shaken out. Thank you, Rusty.
So the last article, this is the Atlantic. We looked at how AI is bringing about or pulling the secular world into kind of a I say this culturally, a come to Jesus moment with itself, saying like, wait a minute, we're a little bit morally, ethically, philosophically bankrupt on defending human dignity, basically.
Mhm.
But on the other side of it, so the Atlantic, doing their talking from both sides here, they also had this article that caught my attention, and it's titled "American Christians Face a Choice."
Which is like, of course, like that's just what we just came to the conclusion. Like,
I know.
there is a choice. They're so right. They don't even know how right they are. It's hilarious.
Yeah. The subheadline: "The faithful can still repair the wreckage they have wrought." Okay, so it's not just the secularists who caused all the issues with society and all this. The Christians are to blame too. And this is kind of a longer one.
Let me
I'll
guess.
try
The
to-
answer is Christian humanism.
Yeah.
Not
Spoiler
to
alert.
bury the lead.
Yeah, no, spoiler alert. We'll get there. I'm glad you did that though, because there's a little bit to go through to get there, and I'm not going to go through every minutia because a lot of it is framed in the context of Trump. Okay, so of course, the Atlantic, you're going to frame everything through Trump. I'll read a couple paragraphs and then skip down to some more important areas. Robert Jeffries, the pastor at First Baptist Church in Dallas, has long been one of Donald Trump's most fawning supporters. By his own account, one reason for his loyalty is that Trump embodies an ethic, cruel, vengeful, and mendacious, that Jeffries and many millions of evangelicals and fundamentalists not only tolerate, but welcome. In an NPR interview in 2016, Jeffries explains, quote, "I don't want some meek and mild leader or somebody who's going to turn the other cheek. I've said I want the meanest, toughest SOB I can find to protect this nation. And so that's why Trump's tone doesn't bother me," end quote. 3 years later, Jeffers said that evangelicals, quote, "don't want to see this warrior removed from his place of leadership in our country." And earlier this year, after Trump's expletive-laden Truth Social post on Easter, Jeffers once again rushed to his defense, quote, "If President Trump were a third-grade Sunday school teacher in our church, that might be a problem, but he's not a third-grade Sunday school teacher," he says, quote, "He's the president of the United States, and presidents sometimes have salty language," end quote. So again, they frame a lot of this in the context of politics.
Political, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. America is engaged in an existential, even cosmic struggle. The enemy is composed of secular, progressive forces who are agents of evil, and Trump's combativeness and ruthlessness are not vices, but necessary virtues. He has been called by God for this moment. Trump's son Eric said that his father, quote, "literally saved Christianity." So again, this is all in the political and cultural context where he is framing Trump, and not him, not the author here, but sort of, he is, but he's reporting on the way American evangelicals and the religious people of America, the politically religious people in America, the Christians especially, have framed Trump as sort of this guy who's pushing back on the evils of progressivism and liberalism and the Democrats and secularism. So
I will say a lot of that narrative is actually created by the
you're
media.
right.
Well,
You're right.
So
You're right.
A lot of that's a straw man. Like a lot of, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but a lot of Christians will say, actually, no, like he is not I guess a Christian warrior. That's sort of a straw man that the media wants to convince everybody that Christians love Trump for Christian reasons.
Right. Well, Trump did lean into some of those things. I mean, they document some of this, which is, we don't have to go through each one of these examples, but yeah, like even more recently with that weird image of he's like, "I'm a doctor. I was just a doctor," but it made him look like he's Jesus coming on the clouds or something, that he shared on Truth Social. But let me get to some highlights here. It's important to understand, however, that Trump didn't fundamentally change the sensibilities of many evangelicals as much as he embodied them. The Calvin University historian Kristen Kobes-Dumez believes the large swaths of the evangelical world embraced Trump as their, quote, "ultimate fighting champion." They were looking for a rugged warrior protector to rally around, and a decade ago, they found him. The result has been wreckage. It's absolute wreckage. The Atlantic, just showing them who they really are in terms of some of this stuff. So they go through why Trump was embraced by the evangelicals. They just keep going through and through the masculinity, the patriotic aspect of things. the stuff we've kind of seen be reported by the mainstream outlets for some time. But it says here, that's hardly the only reason Trump became a revered figure among many American Christians. For decades, they felt looked down on, mocked, and dishonored by elite culture. Tremendous distrust and resentment built up within them, a longing to strike out at the individuals, institutions, and movements they came to hate. They wanted vengeance. Trump understood this. Quote, "I am your warrior. I am your justice," he told supporters during the 2024 campaign. Quote, "And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution," end quote. Trump's contempt and cruelty towards his enemies has been an important part of his appeal to his Christian base. Many of Trump's supporters relish his dehumanization of those they despise. Trump might be a bully, but he's their bully. They long for a restoration of status, for a quote-unquote fighter who would help them regain cultural dominance. Trump's promise to them was a simple, direct appeal to power. Quote, "I will tell you, Christianity is under tremendous siege, whether we want to talk about it or we don't want to talk about it," Trump said in 2016. "Christians make up the overwhelming majority of the country," he told his supporters, "but, quote, we don't exert the power that we should have." As President Trump promised, quote,
political power, which is part of the problem here.
Yep. As President Trump promised, quote, "Christianity will have power." So again,
It's exactly like the Pharisees in waiting for the Messiah, right?
Yes,
New
yes,
Testament,
exactly. Yeah.
everybody was expecting the Messiah. Everybody wanted the Messiah, but the Messiah in the Hebrew sense was a political savior who would free the Hebrews from Rome at the time. And that was why they hated Jesus, because Jesus says, "Hey, I'm the Messiah. I'm here." And they say, "Okay, free us from Rome." And he says,
take over Rome.
You're missing the point.
Yeah.
It's not I'm not a political Messiah. And they say, "Well, we don't want you then. We want the political Messiah."
Right. I mean, that's the Old Testament Israelites over and over and over again, right? That they wanted that king, they wanted that leader. That's why they go into
is another really good, I would say, at least illustration of when people see Trump as at least an antichrist type of figure, right? Coming as a Messiah, but not in the same way that Jesus did, as a political Messiah, which is what the people want of the time. That is what they want. They don't want a political spiritual guy. They need their political savior.
Yeah, so Trump would wield the sword on their behalf. Sometimes he was described as a modern-day Cyrus, a Persian king and a pagan in the Hebrew Bible whom God nevertheless anointed and would use for his purposes. At other times, Trump was compared to King David, a notorious sinner God still loved and used. Whether Trump was himself a godly man was irrelevant. The Almighty would use him for godly purposes. That, at least, is the story they told themselves. By 2024, Trump won a higher percentage of the white evangelical vote than any previous president in history, including Reagan and George W. Bush. The fusion between Trump and evangelicals was complete, and it didn't happen by accident. He was the rider on the white horse many of them had been hoping for. I don't know if it means because there's two white horses in the book of Revelation, right? There's the first seal, which many people believe is the Antichrist. And then there's Jesus, who actually comes back on the white horse. I think that's what they mean here, but it's just funny how they don't necessarily specify. What they may not have quite realized is that they summoned something closer to William Butler Yeat's, quote, rough beast. They loosed anarchy upon the world. How can Christians begin to repair at least some of the immense damage they have done? So the whole context is, look, the American evangelicals wanted a political savior. They got it in Trump, but it just caused so much damage. What are Christians to do?
Which might not be entirely untrue.
I don't think it's entirely untrue. I think they, again, like you said, I think they're part of creating and stoking, almost baiting the American evangelicals to support Trump. Because remember, that was the big psyop, was the mainstream media would just hate on Trump, lie about him, all this stuff. And that created a Streisand effect. It created this notion of, wait, why are they hating on him so much? And then they gained that political support. So, it's a little bit of both, and Trump leaning into it, obviously, for his own purposes. But you can see how it wasn't just one thing or another. It was sort of the larger spiritual psyop that created this situation here. But what is the solution? What do we do? The Atlantic has answers. The ancient tradition of Christian humanism
Of course.
has,
Of
in times
course.
times
Wow.
past, helped Christianity recover its bearings. This is really interesting. They're framing it not as a modern outworking. They're framing it as, no, this is the church in action from the beginning.
It's
Okay.
yes, of course. The original church was just a set of principles that help society. It goes back to
Yes.
the last episode as well with
Yeah.
the Zahn book. I forget what it is, where they mentioned Christian humanism,
Unseen
unseen existences,
existences.
which
Yeah, yeah.
came in the mail today, by the way. It came
Oh, that's
super
quick.
fast.
Yeah, that
Very
is super fast. Wow.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
it might be a sign. I should read it fast.
Okay.
But the sorry, I think we got it. Yeah, that was a thing. Listen to last episode too to see how heavy this is all hitting.
The framework rests on the claim that the deepest affirmation of what it means to be human is found in the incarnation, in the belief that every person is made in the image of God. So interesting. The incarnation, okay, and in the belief that every person is made in the image of God, which is the grounding of human dignity, and in the conviction that learning, scholarship, and the cultivation of the arts and the imagination can themselves be expressions of faith and acts of devotion.
It's so beautiful, and it's also so mostly true, but it misses the point because it says Christian humanism will tell you humans just how perfect you are already. You know, and again, missing the point of original sin, not mentioning the gospel, missing the gospel, the whole thing of Jesus. They even mention the incarnation, but missing the point that it requires a recognition that we need a savior.
The repentance part is missing from the equation when it comes to
Christian humanism is here to say God made us perfect and doesn't say that we're in need of a savior. Then what is the point of Jesus?
Yeah. The roots of Christian humanism go back to the early church, to figures such as Origen, who integrated Platonism with Christian theology, and the Cappadocian Fathers. Okay, great.
Although these the wicked philosophies that this is
that will creep in.
Dude, this freaks me out a little bit too, because I could see even in the last, in recent history, I could see if God had not brought us through the process to bring us exactly where we are today, I could see myself reading this in the past and being like, oh, heck yeah.
Like all about it, right?
Totally
I can see that.
Right? Totally missing this subtlety.
Although these figures would never have referred to themselves as Christian humanists, that term didn't gain currency until many centuries later. They were Christian humanists in substance, if not in name. They believed classical culture and Christian faith could be allies. They wished to place human reason, philosophy, and classical education in the service of Christian revelation. Over the centuries, others built on this foundation, including Thomas Aquinas during the High Middle Ages. But Christian humanism as a phenomenon flourished mostly during the Renaissance. Desiderius Erasmus, a Catholic theologian, promoted the concept of docta pietas, or learned piety, what he called the philosophy of Christ, prioritized inward transformation and a pure heart over rigid theological dogma.
Can I say something before I lose it here? Because I think just before I forget it.
Yeah.
I want to say this even for myself. I also want to be clear. I'm not saying that Christian humanism is bad. I think Christian humanism is also good, right? So I don't want for myself or anybody hearing me to miss the point. And they're making a great case for Christian humanism. I think the world is significantly better for Christian humanism. I think Christian humanism naturally comes out of the gospel. I think, for the most part, I mean, again, like I said, if it's missing, the point being, Christian humanism is not bad. I don't want us to get into the trap of like attacking Christian humanism, but Christian humanism without the gospel is nothing.
It's just works almost.
It's useless.
It's
It's
work.
works.
Yeah, it's works.
It's
Yeah,
anti-Christ. It's anti what Jesus
it's
taught.
antichrist.
Humanism, Christian humanism without the explicit gospel is works alone and is trash. That's where we're at. So I'm not going to fight with anybody about whether Christian humanism is essentially good or bad. I think it is good. But if your Christian humanism is a replacement for the gospel, then it's worthless.
Right. And I think part of it is also the faith and who or what or how the true restoration of the world takes place.
Yeah, because this is just works-based restoration of the world.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
If we're good, if we act like good enough Christians, then we can bring heaven on earth, which was exactly what was addressed in the article last episode.
Mm-hmm. What he called the philosophy of Christ prioritized inward transformation as a pure heart over rigid theological dogma. This is, yeah. I mean, it's sure. For Erasmus,
bad. All good.
Not inherently bad, but of course,
still
it's sort
trash without the gospel. Still nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can not be a Christian and have a great pure heart, and not be or be against rigid theological dogma. For Erasmus, theology and philosophy went together. Humanism could be a means to build up the Philosophia Christi. The main aim, however, was not to improve the intellect, but to live in imitation of Christ. I mean, yeah, okay. I think they go hand in hand, but okay. By the 20th century, Christian thinkers such as Jacques Maritain, T.S. Eliot, C.S. Lewis, W.H. Auden, and Simone Weil were drawing on the Christian humanist tradition to critique their own culture and to outline a plan for moral and spiritual regeneration. As the scholar Alan Jacobs has argued in The Year of Our Lord 1943, Christian Humanism in the Age of Crisis, each of them strove to make sense of the world at war and in chaos and to create meaning within it. They, quote, worked with astonishing energy to rescue their world for a deeply thoughtful, culturally rich Christianity, Jacob writes, quote, and to rescue that.
I love
that.
Culturally
rich, I know. And to rescue that Christianity for their world. A cultural crisis created an unusual opportunity for Christian humanism to be given a new hearing. Some of us hope that it may yet happen again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they're hoping for it.
They're hoping for it to happen again. Okay. Christian humanism isn't an easy concept to understand. Well, in part because the noun and the modifier are inherently at odds.
No,
Enlightenment.
they are not. What are
I
you
know.
talking about? What?
I know. He just went through a whole thing of how it goes back.
The adversary is working overtime on his deception here.
Well, it's just funny how he just went through it goes way back to the early fathers and it's the church and and then he says how the words
he's having to say this to I don't know to maybe justify it for the secularist, right? To say Christianity and humanism are opposites. I don't know.
Affirm.
Rhetorically, I could have that conversation, but that's implying that Christianity is anti-human, right?
Yeah, it's just so not true. But yeah, I think it's to affirm a sort of initial reaction, maybe from the secular point of view, that you can't have Christian humanism, and they'll get into why they think that. So Enlightenment humanism is generally understood as anthropocentric, whereas Christianity is theocentric. The humanistic impulse tends to make reason the final authority, whereas Christianity is a revelatory faith. If humanists view the things of this world as ends in themselves, Christianity aims to treat them more as passing things. Historically, humanists, especially since the Enlightenment, have defined themselves against religion generally and against Christianity specifically. But the hostility runs in both directions, you see. Many Christians have been just as wary of Athens, a shorthand reference to human philosophy and worldly learning, as humanists have been of the church. In the words of the early Christian theologian Tertullian, quote, "What indeed has Athens to do with Jerusalem?" Tertullian was arguing that the Christian faith should be kept separate from corrupting worldly influences. He didn't want Christians to elevate human philosophy about divine revelation. Many Christians today share his concerns, but advocates of Christian humanism would say in response that Athens can serve Jerusalem and the humanism when religiously grounded, can serve the Christian faith and the common good. They would say, too, that the life of the mind and the life of faith are not in opposition. People of faith can absolutely benefit from a serious engagement with scholarship, classical learning, and the arts, and with what the poet Matthew Arnold referred to as, quote, "the best which has been taught and said in the world," end quote. They are not
operating from the secular assumption that Christianity is anti-academic.
Yes.
Right?
A very, very old paradigm.
You can be a Christian and be academic. Isn't that unbelievable? Which for a certain population is going to be like, oh, I guess I'm a Christian humanism then. I mean, I don't need the gospel or believe in the resurrection or anything. There's a type of Christianity that can appreciate scholarship. Oh, it's called Christian human.
Right. It's almost saying the same thing that the last article was.
Academic.
Yeah, it's saying the same thing the last article was saying, but just kind of in different words here. Moreover, Christian humanists believe the sacred secular divide that many Christians embrace is not just artificial, but profoundly misguided. They see engagement with the world as a divine commission. The incarnation dignified the material world, which is good, though in constant need of repair and healing. Christianity, then, is not a separatist, otherworldly faith, as the psalmists say, quote, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it," end quote.
The implication of all of this is that actually gospel-based Christianity is still the bad guy.
It's still bad guy. Yep, I know. But at the very core of Christian humanism is a belief in the inherent dignity and worth of all human beings who are made in the image of God and in the and in pursuit of a society that respects and values the intrinsic and equal worth of the individual regardless of social status.
No, that's called Christianity, not Christian humanism. That's just called the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay. Yeah, this is good. This is a very specific psyop to separate, to imply that the gospel is still for bad guys, but Christian humanism is the good guy version.
Yeah. They go through the philosopher theologian David Bentley. Christianity brought a moral revolution. We don't have to go through all of that, but let me just jump ahead here. And they talk about other non-Christian sources for human dignity, like Judaism, Stoicism, but Christianity added immeasurably to them. But it needs to be acknowledged.
Is an interesting phrase to use too. That's so specific.
It is.
You know,
it is.
Somebody just kind of passing through, they'll read human dignity and they'll just kind of apply it to, if they don't already have, again, a gospel-centered vision of what humanity is, this phrase human dignity is just kind of a placeholder for eternal value without actually having to define what that eternal value is.
Yeah. You know what else provides dignity is the mark of the beast. Hey, it required all people, small, great, rich and poor, free and slave. You all get a mark. Okay. It just really appeals to human dignity, That's kind of the greater takeaway here too.
It needs to be glorified when you can be dignified.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let me continue. There's a few other parts here, but this needs to be acknowledged too. Christianity has often betrayed its commitment to the Imago Dei, the belief that people are made in the image of God and therefore have inherent equal dignity and worth. The moral failures of Christianity make for a long and horrifying list. I mean, they go through the Inquisition, the witch trials, the persecution of Jews and indigenous people, the gay people. They go on and on here. So we don't have to go through all of them, but that's sort of their take of like, see, even the Christians, even though they believe this, they failed. And it's like, yes, that's the whole point. Yes, man is a failure. So what does Christian humanism offer today's world? Any answer starts from within the faith. The first task is to help people who claim to follow Jesus better align their lives and attitudes with his. Okay, it's an attitude problem, okay?
Yeah,
First of all, Christian humanism offers an urgent corrective to those who equate Christian success with the seizure of power. All right.
Duh.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. Yeah. That's kind of why we push back on Christian nationalism and things like that.
Mhm.
Instead, it takes as its model Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, which was the work of the lowliest of servants, and Jesus's declaration that the blessed are the meek and the merciful, those
Yeah,
who mourn
the
are pure in
gospel.
heart. Yeah, the gospel, right?
The
Exactly.
gospel.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. The British journalist Malcolm Muggeridge, who converted to Christianity late in his life, pointed out that Jesus' entire ministry was directed against the pretensions of earthly power. Yes, thank you for stating the obvious, but that's funny how they're trying to rebrand
they
basic
just can't
gospel
say
to Christian humanism,
Yeah, they just can't say the gospel.
Christian humanism, by virtue of its openness to serious scholarship and the importance it places on the life of the mind, provides a needed alternative to the anti-intellectualism and black and white thinking that characterizes much of modern American Christianity. Yeah, all those silly, low-thinking Christians out there. A dozen years ago, I spent time with Steve Hayner. Shortly before he died, he said that we can neither afford an ill-defined center nor an overly defined edges, meaning you can't abandon Christianity's core convictions about objective truth grounded in God and most fully revealed and embodied in Christ, but it is precisely their firm grip on the center that should allow Christians to be comfortable with complexity. Yes, we know about some of this. I don't need to reiterate the point here. This is going somewhere, folks. Just be patient. There's some punchlines here coming up. Here. There's gaping need for Christianity, whose posture toward the world is more irenic and charitable, far less anxious and fear-driven, one that cultivates curiosity, including toward those outside the faith, and fosters a deep longing for knowledge and understanding.
No sense.
There's a
mean?
There's a need. Yeah, the Gnostic. Yeah. There's a need for Christians to take beauty seriously as a theological category and to hold the doctrine of human depravity in its proper place as a truth that never diminishes the human dignity it assumes. The best ambassadors for the Christian faith are people who, because of their faith, find ways to re-enchant the world.
There it is.
There it is.
There it is.
What the Christian humanists are saying is the best Christians are the ones that are going to re-enchant the world.
That's it right
Isn't
there.
that
Man, have
interesting?
we unlocked
Isn't that interesting?
or what? The age of
Man.
re-enchantment. That's
Wow.
the trick. Okay.
I really want Carl Teicher's thoughts on this because, he did talk about this angle and this side of things, but now that it's really out there, because everything he talked about with the UN and the New World Order and all these things, and he always spoke about it from that sort of new agey perspective of like oneness and all these different things, the language he used to describe it. But it's really kind of the same thing that the Christian humanists are saying.
Well, that's what they talk about the Christian humanists in its universality. They've talked about the universality of it, meaning it's non-exclusive, right? It's this nobody's wrong. It's all are one. That's the re-enchantment. So the re-enchantment is happening, and they're coming in. The clever little trick is to replace the gospel with Christian humanism. Even my brain wants to call
Your brain wants to merge the two.
Human Christianism is really what it is.
It's really, you're right. I think that's what it is. Whether what I'm describing belongs under the banner of Christian humanism or not, or some different name, Christians must recalibrate how they see God's world and those who are made in his image. Wow. This is a generations-long undertaking. It involves reshaping not just beliefs, but perception. We must reshape our beliefs. beliefs.
straw man is
What are you?
incredible.
Isn't that
And,
crazy?
and people are going to buy it too. Unfortunately,
I
Christians
know
are
so many
too.
people. I mean, so many people are already in it. That's the thing. They're
Yeah.
already in this. And I think, when I was first became a believer we were kind of at a semi mega church, and a lot of them, it was based on taking care of the poor people and doing that kind of stuff. And it was all fine. But there was something always a little off about it. Like I was always like, what is it that's off about it? I don't know what it is, but I think it's much clearer now.
It feels like the extension of the 2016 deconstructionist era.
Yeah, right. Yes. But now
Like
they're
the new
they're
version.
back with new armor, like new shiny armor, but it's really
Well,
the same
that,
thing
even
underneath.
more important, maybe certain Christians, like that wasn't a mainstream movement, right?
Right.
Christian
Yeah, it was a church
deconstructionism
movement.
was just
Yeah.
within the church,
Yeah.
whereas this, which is kind of deconstructing 2.0, is a mainstream and secular call
Right. It
to a
bridges
version of
everything.
Christianity without the gospel.
Well, especially since the secular world recognizes the shortcomings of their own sort of philosophy. It's like, oh, the Christian humanists are kind of seeing it too, and there's a little common ground there. So interesting. Okay, so yeah, the reshaping not just belief but perceptions, the sensibilities and dispositions that lie beneath belief. It can be done only by creating a culture in which the best qualities of Christian humanism and the concept of the Imago Dei are not just given lip service, but cultivated and celebrated in churches and beyond churches.
It's so funny too. It feels like that's exactly what they're doing. They're giving
it is.
lip service to the
I
Imago
know.
Dei
It's
for
so funny,
human
right?
Christianism.
Yeah. Speaking of lip service, it goes on to how he sees encouragement, how his wife and him, Cindy, they went to a conference called the Understory Festival at the Washington National Cathedral, hosted by Comment Magazine. There were writers, artists, musicians, and pastors. More than 1,000 attended. The British theologian Luke Bretherton spoke. And said, quote, "To follow Christ is not simply to await salvation in some distant future, but to begin participating here and now in forms of common life marked by justice, generosity, mutual care." And again, that statement by itself it's not wrong, it's really what we ought to do.
And arguably, they talk about the inner transformation and all this stuff. So what they're saying can be accomplished by by Christian humanism, arguably, from my perspective, is impossible without the gospel, which makes what they are defining as Christian humanism, like I said, totally worthless.
It's
Because it is
anti-Christ.
the gospel that creates the inner transformation that brings what they describe, and what they're doing with trying to say, oh, you can have all the transformation, you can have the salvation, you can have all the good stuff without the gospel. But the reality is that it is exactly impotent for that exact reason without the gospel.
Yeah, and they give a whole bunch of examples in history where, during the plagues, the Christians were the ones that stayed behind to help with the people that were sick and all this kind of stuff. And again, like you said, it's all under the pretense
Christians
of the gospel.
Made all the hospitals. Hospitals don't exist without Christianity.
Yeah, right.
Like none of this, which fits into the movement today that a lot of people are coming to Christendom through, which is like the West, right? They're kind of equating the West with Christendom, because there would be no West without the Christendom. Without Christianity and henceforth Christendom. But leaving the gospel out of all of that is very dangerous. Is like I said, just nothing. It's nonsense.
Yeah. So it brings up Julian, the Roman emperor, and how he was sort of speaking to his fellow pagans about how, look at the benevolence of the Christians to their strangers, and that they need to do the same. Sort of a behavioral type of thing that it would be good to do. Will it do so again? In some places, it already is. Christians are showing themselves to be repairers of the breach. McLean Presbyterian. What's up with the Presbyterians? Presbyterian Church, where my wife and I attend, set up a program to assist Afghan refugees in the immediate aftermath of the American withdrawal in 2021. Today, the church partners with local organizations that assist in homelessness and the elderly and victims of abuse. That's all great stuff, but that doesn't again,
It's
works.
just missing the point. Works are good. Works are good.
But it should happen because of a change of the heart and not a means to it.
Mhm.
And they talk about Frederick Douglass, of course. They got to bring that up. Last sentence here: narrowing the enormous difference between the Christianity of our land and the Christianity of Christ is the urgent calling of our time.
Hmm.
The Christianity of Christ is very interesting. I want to dig into that maybe another
Yeah,
time. But that's it's something to be to kind of think about and study. Now, I did look into this conference that was mentioned here, Comment Magazine, and they have a whole section on Christian humanism, a little Q&A thing, and they lay out some of their philosophy and what they believe and how they operate. And to be quite frank, again, like we were talking about, a lot of it is, it's just good works type of stuff.
Mhm.
It's like, it's kind of obvious. Like, you don't need an institution to tell you what to do. Like, you should be, if you have that true transformation and repentance, like, this
It's the
stuff should be kind of a
earthly
natural
faith.
artworking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
outworking. Sorry,
earthly
not artworking.
faith from the thing last time, which is just a faith only for the benefit of the earth,
Yeah.
missing out on.
So as a summary, there are things you can agree with the Christian humanism theology, if you will. Like the image of God is in every person, sure. The dignity of the poor, the elderly, the imprisoned, the disabled, and of course, they have dignity. They are humans. Opposition to dehumanizing ideologies, and the importance of compassion and hospitality and sacrificial service. These are all, Christ-like actions.
All good.
And the part that is interesting though is they really press in, and this is kind of where the dominionism creeps in. They're pushing for Christians to build institutions that promote human flourishing
Mm.
rather than, and they're pushing back against political establishments, right? They're like, we don't want more political establishments or to win a political culture war type per se, but no, we want to promote human flourishing, which
Yeah,
is,
they want the benefits of the teaching of Christ without the obligations of dying to self,
right.
right? They want the
Yeah.
social benefits of Christ's teachings without the responsibility or the obligation to actually submit to Christ.
So the parts that they are really kind of missing is, like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, a Heiser context. I'll just call it that. Dr. Michael
Yeah,
Heiser's
without the
context.
supernatural.
There's
That's
no
the
supernatural. There's no
Yeah.
spiritual warfare sort of understanding of things. There's not really the. They do acknowledge human rebellion in a sense, but they're not really explaining why there is human rebellion. I mean, that article, the AI article mentioned sin, but you can go deeper with that as to why sin exists in the world, and it's not just people are bad. There is a cosmic rebellion that's behind the human rebellion, and that's really the bigger story here. There's no concept of divine judgment.
Mhm.
With a lot of what people suffer in this world, at least for me, like, I've noticed that people that really have a true understanding of the gospel, they're not necessarily looking for earthly justice.
Mhm.
They understand that there is this divine judgment, this divine justice that will come eventually, and so having that faith and that hope transcends any kind of worldly comfort that can be, I don't know, forced upon us at any given point. So, having that sort of cosmic or eternal perspective is missing with some of this stuff.
Right.
And again, it all comes down to the context of God's kingdom versus the kingdom of darkness.
Yeah,
And
which
it's almost they're almost assisting the realm of the kingdom of darkness while calling it doing Christian works.
It's
which
very
is,
similar to the discomfort with the idea of sin, right?
yeah, right,
Discomfort
exactly.
with sin because it's a description of our supernatural place kind of in the universe. Like sin, you don't
Yeah,
believe in the supernatural, sin is can basically just be non-existent, right?
right.
So it's all an extension of that supernatural aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's really good for Christian charity and, sort of our civic duties. and
And
things
it
of that
will
nature.
be
like
good for society. Like that's the
that's
funny
what I
thing.
think too. Yeah, I
It
think it'll be
will
good,
be good for civilization. Like
helping the
Christianity's
homeless, and
effect, historically, objectively, Christianity's effect on the development of civilization, there's nothing else like it. There's
yeah,
nothing as good for a civilization than Christianity.
yeah,
But it's
right.
kind of this weird, like, lizard people, elite little deception
Yes,
to say, like, okay, let's just get people to help civilization with their Christianity, but we don't need any of that wonky supernatural stuff. We don't actually
yeah,
need the gospel, right? We
yeah,
could just
and
use it as a tool for power.
right, right. It's really focused on the horizontal war,
Yeah,
which is what kind of what the culture and I think what the enemy wants us to do is focus on that horizontal battlefield, if you will, the right
mhm,
left paradigm, the conservatives versus the liberals. It's always this
exactly,
horizontal axis and not so much the vertical axis. The
exactly.
what we're battling on the vertical, and
Yeah,
uh, ultimately, what it comes down to me, and I think I might even try to fit it into my Patreon Bible study for Sunday, is the counterfeit signs and wonders that the
mhm,
Antichrist and the man of sin is going to present, right? And you think about, obviously, Christ has followers, but the beast will have many followers.
yeah,
Uh, God will seal his people. The mark of the beast will seal its people with a mark or a sign or seal.
yeah,
Christ receives worship. The beast receives or demands worship. The gospel goes to all nations. The beast demands allegiance from all nations.
yeah,
The
yeah,
lamb has a bride. And of course, the beast had a bride, which was Babylon, who became the harlot. Uh,
yeah,
the kingdom claims all people. The beast seeks a sense of universal dominance or dominion, if you will. And like I mentioned earlier, the mark of the beast is offered to the small, the great, the rich, the poor, the free, the slave. I mean, the humanists would love this. This is
mhm,
great. Everyone can participate in the world's economy. Of course, let's dish it out. Let's do it now. So you can see how the taken too far without looking at the eschatological implications, you might miss. It'll blind you. It'll blind you into the deception, if you will.
Without the gospel, Christian humanism is antichrist.
It's
Like it
totally antichrist. It's so wild,
almost
man.
explicitly, almost by its own definition, right? In the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
they're explaining it, like you don't need gospel, you don't need Jesus. I mean, you can like what he says, but you don't actually need his supernatural, mission. And
right.
and that's where the elect can be deceived. It's like, oh, Christian humanism, it's Christianity, and I don't need anything else. It's like
And,
explicitly antichrist.
and it might be a very good outreach tool for your secularists. And this is maybe why we're finding these articles in the Atlantic, because I'm wondering, based on maybe they did some surveys or something, and people are feeling pretty uh, distraught over what's happening, and they see the rise of faith and religion and all this stuff culturally, and they don't feel like they can participate in the sort of hyper political Christianity that's been emerging. But maybe they can, and this is maybe the rebranding of liberal or progressive Christianity in a sense, to allow for some of those people that were a little bit outcast, if you will, from the current cultural movement, to have a place, to have something to hold on to. And especially for those who aren't Christian, they can be like, well, yeah, again, I like what Jesus said. I like what he taught. I like the principles of what he taught. I think that's what Elon Musk said
Mhm. Yeah.
explicitly. I think Elon said, like, I like Jesus's teachings or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
So
the old phrase cultural Christianity.
cultural Christianity,
The
right,
famous
right.
old church phrase. Yeah.
So I think this whole discussion is really fascinating, and we will see so much of this emerge probably in the next few years. It'll probably be part of the conversation.
It'll be
And
everything, especially for believers today. Now, like this is going to be the most important context that you could possibly have to make it through this next little session of history, I think.
and think about the vacuum created by the Epstein stuff and the human trafficking and all that. It creates a perfect setup for people to get sucked into this type of worldview
The
where
subheadline is so interesting. Christian humanism, an invitation to a truer
true,
story.
yeah, truer story.
Truer. That's a great way to think about Christian humanism without the gospel. Like if the true story is the gospel, a truer story is Christian humanism. Like, it's not
Right.
bad. It's not, there's every good thing about Christian humanism is good, but just it's missing. It's only truer if it's missing the gospel.
Yeah, yeah, and they push back against. Well, maybe next episode we can dig into it. But they push back against transhumanism. They push back against Christian nationalism,
Yeah,
like
which it needs
some of
to
the
be,
things.
because
Yeah,
people are
right.
waking up to that already. Like,
Yeah, right.
objectively, people are waking up. The mainstream is waking up against transhumanism, and so they need to have an answer. Because if they don't come out with an answer, like Christian humanism, then people are going to start receiving Jesus and start following the gospel.
It's so funny how we're like, a lot of the people that see this stuff are like, okay, the people are starting to realize the issue with Epstein, the trafficking, the psyop, the propaganda, all this stuff, the Nephilim, all these things. It's like, oh, finally they can, come to the truth. And it's like all these different elements cut in line, like, whoa, we're here. Christian humanism is here with open arms. Hey, come grab you. It's like, it's like a land grab going on. So it's really interesting. And the fact that they use the phrase re-enchantment, that it is the Christian believer they need to lead the re-enchantment of society or the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's perfect.
Come on.
We couldn't do this, Gons, if it weren't for our producers, and I think it's time we thank them here. Are you good for that?
I'm good, yes.
All right.
I've gotten it off my chest.
Lord knows there's no way we could keep doing this show if we had chosen to step into the realm of corporate sponsorship, advertising, platform partnership. This wouldn't happen. I mean, this is the type of thing you look around and you go, why the heck did we get canceled and other people saying the same stuff didn't? Well, it's because of the gospel. The gospel is the true dangerous thing. It's always been the true dangerous thing. It's not the conspiracy theories. It's not the whatever, because, hey, that's everywhere. But it's truly the gospel that is the most dangerous thing to the adversary in the spiritual war. And so, therefore, we do not participate in advertising. We don't like to sell your attention. We don't like to gain the approval and the monetary support of corporations whose whole goal is to mine you for all the value, squeeze all the value and money they can out of you. Participating in that just doesn't align with what we're trying to do here. So instead, we're on the value for value model. It's very simple. It's the only way that we're able to keep going. If you got any value out of this show, if you get any value out of our other shows, the only way we can keep doing it is with your support. And you can support the show with your time, your talent, your treasure. Any way you want to do it. If you want to learn more, support the show, go to canarycry.support.
I want to start time too.
Yeah, I know. I want to
rush through some of this.
We're going. There's not a whole lot of producers. That week continues, so don't worry, it'll be quick. But our executive producers are those who come in, support the show for $100 or more, and so we like to thank them here at the top. One executive producer for the day. So of course, a big thank you to executive producer Sir LX Protocol V2 Baron of the Brian Protocol. Comes in for $100.33.
Illuminatus!
Thank you. 494 episodes in a row and 148 episodes of executive producerships in a row.
Thank you, Sir Alex Protocol.
That's our one and only executive producer. We had one producer come in under the executive producer amount when we started the show. Thank God some people got some value, came in, supported the show during the show. But we're going to start out by thanking producer Sir Marty B. Comes in for $77.74.
Oh, Sir Marty B. Thank you.
Sir Marty B. Of course, we have producer Rebecca T. coming in for $43.21, 4321.
Thank you, Rebecca T. She's got to be in the streak, right?
Yep, 31 episodes in a row.
Yeah, she's on a streak.
Thank you, Rebecca T.
Producer Raul S., who might be a night. Apologies, Raul S., if I don't have your night name. But Raul S. comes in for $33.66.
Close enough.
Illuminatus!
Let's see here. Sir Darren, Night of the Hungry Panda, is on the list.
Thank you, Sir Darren.
You got that 33.
Oh, 33. Okay, yeah.
Illuminatus!
And he sent a note here that says Amazon.com Super Soaker Blasters. Just saying, he says. Okay.
A throwback to the olden days.
Super Soaker Blasters. Let me see what comes up here. Yeah, looks like
you don't know about those?
I don't know. I don't know. I know Super Soaker, but Blaster, I didn't know exactly. So take a look. Okay. Summer fun time. Let's get some Super Soaker Blasters. Thank you, Sir Darren. Of course, Bruce W comes in, supports the show for 1111.
Bruce W, thank you.
The note that says, this note not intentionally left blank this time. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thank you.
Monica comes in for $8.88.
Monica, thank you.
And a note that says, thank you for the prayers, fam. My father-in-law is doing well after surgery. Monica, thank you, Monica.
Amen.
Okay, that concludes our list of financial producers who came in to support the show for $7.77 or more, which entitles them to have a note read on the show. It is Wednesday, so we're going to thank a couple people who come in under the $7.77 because they're keeping big, long streaks going, and we're very grateful for that. Starting with, of course, Dame Tinfoil Hat, keeper of the seeds.
Thank you, Dame Tinfoil Hat.
219 episodes in a row.
Yeah, she's on a streak.
And of course, Sir Casey the Shield Knight, 633 in a row.
Sir Casey the Shield Knight.
I want to, of course, thank another producer missed on the list here, but that's Cage Rattler Coffee.
Cage Rattler Coffee. Where value for value never tasted so good.
That's right. Go to cagerattlercoffee.com. You're going to get the coffee anyways. Don't get those dirty, moldy, burnt beans from the big corporation that hates you. You can support a Canarian just like you and support the show and get the best GMO-free, single origin, organic coffee beans in the world over at cagerattlercoffee.com. And I want to thank 785 who texted and says, Basil, I want to follow up on those terrible old moldy beans. I finally finished them. I had to. I could not run away from the consequences of my actions. Every sip was a reminder of how much that large corporation hates me. It was painful, but I made it through. Never again. Thank you, 785, who is now going to be getting all of his coffee from Cage Rattler Coffee and not the big, moldy, terrible bean companies out there. We had a speak pipe come in. Oh, I do want to say, if you're an artist, you can also support the show. It doesn't matter what kind of art you do. Go to canarycry.art to upload the art there. With Lil Owen made a track for us, and we'll be playing that track at the end of the show here. Thank you, Lil Owen. And Nomen Prunte sent a speak pipe for us, and anybody can leave us a voicemail if you want. You can do whatever you want. Just know we're probably going to play it on the show, so keep that in mind. Tell us if you don't want to play it on the show, but if you go to canarycrynewstalk.com, you'll see a green tab on the right or the bottom of the screen. Click on that green tab and you can record us a 90-second message. We have one from Nomen Prunte here we're going to play.
Nomen Prunte here. This is Squeaky Clean. A leper came to him, imploring, kneeling, and said, "If you will, you can. Make me clean." Pity moved him. He stretched out his hand and touched him and said, "I will. Be clean." Leprosy immediately left him. He was made clean, and Jesus at once charged him, said, "Say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest. Make offering, Moses commanded, for your cleansing, for a proof." He went out and talked freely and spread the news about it, so that Jesus could no longer enter a town. Out in desolate places, people were coming to him from every quarter. Jesus touched the leprous man, the one cleansing offering.
Amen.
Thank you very much. No,
Thank you very much.
Amazing.
Monica sent a text that I think is important for this episode. She says, the verse that comes to mind regarding Christian humanism It's Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many mighty works in your name? And then will I declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. Thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
She
That's
texted
a hard
that.
one.
Yeah, to the Canary Cry text message alert system, which you can get on by texting the word canary to 877-740-3226. Go do it. And last but not least, we got a couple producers who help us out with their time. A big old shout out to our time stampers.
Timestamp, it's hard work. Timestamp.
That's right.
Yes,
Is it Jade Bouncerson? I bet it's Jade Bouncerson.
I think it's Jade Bouncerson.
Morgan
There's no one else right now doing it. So yeah, Jade Bouncerson, thank you for episode 947. And Morgan E when she hops in. Yeah.
Shout out to the tech team. Big shout out to the tech team. And thank you to Jam for heading up the Telegram channel. Thank you to Adam42 for heading up the Discord channel. Go to canarycry.party if you want to join those groups. You should join those groups. Get in, fellowship with other Canarians, or go to canarycry.community for another fellowship experience. Thank you to Joe for the feedback. Thank you to Clank for everything you're doing, Clank. Clank sent an email. We have his night name wrong on the Roundtable website.
Okay.
So we'll fix that.
We'll fix that, yeah.
And of course, a big shout out to Sir Ike for doing everything he does for the show. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you, Sir Ike. And other than that, share the show, folks. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. This one in particular, share this with all your Christian friends and family, even if they're not total weirdos like you. But we call it rattling cages, and all you got to do is walk right up to them, grab them by the cage, and then you shake it.
The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! You'll never silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
That's right. Just ask Noah. Guns, you got any last words?
Have a great Canary Cry Clubhouse tomorrow. It is Propaganda Rooster Remembrance Day. So celebrate that with Basil tomorrow.
Yeah, I missed that little guy.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, stick around. We got a track from Lil Owen after the show here. But thanks for tuning in to this episode of Canary Cry News Talk. We're going to be back on Monday. We got Clubhouse tomorrow. So make sure to tune in. But until then, think outside the page.
This is the way.
We're all gonna die.
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
If he then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things above, not all things on the earth. We are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, and shall ye also appear with him in glory. there is neither Greek nor Jew, but Christ is all, and in all. And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness, and let the peace of God rule in your hearts.
Value for value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
Canary cry.